Well, it's good to see you.
Yeah, same here, man.
It's been too long.
I know. I know. Actually, this year last year I said, Jeanette, we need to get over to England,
Yeah,
next year. But then how things are going this year, I don't think I'm going to travel.
yeah, yeah. It's yeah. We live in crazy times.
It's a little messy.
Yeah. I mean,
I
that
don't know.
said, though, like I mean, I, I have decided I'm definitely coming to the NAMM show next year. So,
Good.
because otherwise, it's already been 3 years. So I need to come
Yeah.
back.
I ran into a couple guys from the UK at my session, and they were like, "We haven't been here since 2020, right before the pandemic." They go, "It's
Yeah,
changed," and I go, "Well, the industry's changed. There's a lot that has changed.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. And how was the show? Like, well, how is the show? I mean, it was 2023 last time I was there.
it's skinny.
Right.
I mean, the other thing we don't think of, how many companies have consolidated, how many people have,
Mm,
you know, disappeared. I mean,
right.
it's um, Fender had an appointment only booth. You only could go see them if there was you had an appointment and you're a dealer. Other things seem very normal. The show is active. There's more
Okay.
consumers at it than there used to be.
Yeah, right. Because when I met you, um, I don't think it was open to the public.
No, not at all. People had to get a pass from someone that worked in a music store. They slid them one sideways.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, but it's still business is getting done. There's some great
Mm.
educational sessions going on. Um, you know, there's still a normalcy to it. I mean, but
Yeah,
the
yeah.
the problem is people that it's never going to be the way it was.
Right.
Retail's not the same it was. Music lessons isn't the same. Nothing's, cars aren't the same they were. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, who's got a stick shift in their car?
Yeah. I mean, do you think that's part of the problem? Like, do you think that even people like me, like, they just kind of romanticize about, like, how it used to be, and because a lot of when I met you in 2007, right? 2006, 2007.
Yeah, around
Um,
then.
yeah, and not only has it changed, so that's before the financial crash. That's, you know,
Yeah, right before it.
yeah. But sadly, a lot of people have gone as well, and perhaps people that were namesakes of business, like Vic Firth or Bob
Right,
Zildjian, right?
right,
People like that
right, right.
that would perhaps have a different take on looking after people like me, for example, who were always wanting more than they might deserve. Do you know what I mean?
Right, I agree. I agree. I have these discussions with people saying, at one time, you talk to people and they go, well, what do you need? We want you
Yeah,
to be successful.
yeah,
You would have these discussions. I run into people all the time that go, I was at the clinic that you did with so and so, for drum. And
yeah,
what's happened to the clinics? And I go, there's no drum clinics anymore.
yeah.
There's no guitar clinics. One of the great examples are we're an Eastman saxophone dealer, and one of the guys who plays Eastman sax is a guy named Gary Bias, and he's on Earth, Wind, and Fire's band for 20
Right.
years.
Yeah,
He lives like 20 minutes from our store. I mean, so we're not traveling, lodging, nothing. Now he's got a busy schedule. I talked to Eastman about how could we do this. He's one of your endorsees. Well, I don't know. You'd have to get in touch with him. and have to work it out with him. Where in the old days,
Yeah.
no offense, they're an up and coming company and they're a great company. But the old days, someone would have been saying, we'll go out, no problem, let's get something set up. Let's get them
Yeah.
out there,
Yeah.
But now it's like, it's basically, are you in Sweetwater? Are you in, who are you in?
Yeah.
And it's buying, it's a big push that way. I mean, when Sam Ash went out, because the Sam Ash was in our neighborhood too. And it was a really interesting thing when the Ash family had, I wasn't on Reddit, but on he did an interview with somebody. And he said the reason they couldn't survive is keeping all these main lines in and keeping the amount of product they had to have in and competing. They were still a mom and pop store, even though they had a few of them,
Yeah.
But
Yes, I mean that's interesting because I mean, like for me, when I'd visit LA, Sam Ash was opposite Guitar Center,
right.
and maybe my perception of it was bigger than what it was. So I don't know.
So one of my ex-employees went to work for Sam Ash, and then he did well, and he got promoted to be a manager at the San Diego store.
Okay.
So we stayed in contact because, he was far enough away and whatever. And the one thing I had to say, Sammy Ash, before he died, he was a real honest and straightforward guy to have as a competitor. And
Yeah.
sometimes we badmouth people, but, he was in it for the good of the industry. He would, wanted the industry to do well. But, I talked to this former employee, and he was like saying, guitar, he's now a manager of the Guitar Center in San Diego, but he was panicked about where am I going to get a job? What jobs are left? It used to be work in the retail store, maybe go work for a chain, then become a sales rep.
Yeah, that was the way. Yeah.
Not way up, but right now sales reps are a dying breed. I mean, there's about 2 or 3 that call on us, and that's it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I mean, here, if you're not doing enough business, they won't even give you an account.
Right. Yeah, we just hired on a new employee, and she was like, "Why don't we have this? Why can't? Boy, it'd be nice to have this." And I was like, "Look, it'd be nice to have all that, but here's your deal: are you gonna sell 12 Paul Reed Smith guitars a month? Oh, and by the way, let's sell 12 Martin guitars and 12 Taylor guitars and 12 Ibanez. No, not the store, you."
Yeah, you're right.
Because,
yeah.
and they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" I go, "Well, this is all great, but you have to move product. Gibson, man, you'd have to move like 12 American Les Pauls a month. I'm just rounding." And they're like, "But and someone else is going to have to sell the same amount as you just to keep those." And they're like, "But I can get it." Yeah, but they don't get the dynamics of the quantity you have to carry those lines.
Yeah, and it's definitely changed. I mean, it's those numbers are like they're unfathomable. Like,
Right. And I told her, I go, over the years I carried Taylor and Paul Reed Smith and Martin and Gibson and Epiphone and. But there's no way I could do that. It's not my store anymore, but I mean, I understand the dynamics of this industry.
Yeah.
And this new young employee who's like 18 is like, well, no. Here's this interview that I forget the Ash. It was Sammy's cousin who was running the business. I forget his first name, but you need to listen to this guy talk. That's why they're not there. You notice that store's not there anymore, 2 miles from us. And she goes, "Yeah." I go, "Here's why." It's changed. One of the smart things at the place I'm at is the woman that runs the store and owns it. she realized a long time ago that, you know, you could financially commit suicide by trying to keep all the lines in, you know.
Yeah.
So she focused in on what I call the bread and butter, renting band instruments and doing repairs and lessons, and adding the sales on top as icing on the cake.
Yeah. Yeah. But and so just for like my students and stuff, I mean, whereabouts in California are you, Pete? Like where do you live and work?
Okay. So I'm in the exotic city of Rancho Cucamonga, California, which is not very exotic. It's a suburb. We are 45 miles due east of Los Angeles. So we're not in LA County. We're in San Bernardino County, which is the next county over. If you look at a map and see Ontario International Airport, we are like 3 miles due north of that. So we're still influenced highly by the LA conditions. The inland, we call the San Bernardino area, we're in the Inland Empire, and there's about 1.9 million people in my area.
Wow.
But it's a huge area. But so we're still LA. The NAMM Show is like about 40-mile drive, from us too. So we're outside, not far. Los Angeles is a weird dynamic. We're just, as you know, you land in LA and keep driving for 50 or 60 miles before you run out of houses.
Yeah.
But we're in a totally different area. A lot of different factors, out here than in Los Angeles.
Yeah. And am I right in thinking that you're on Route 66?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, my place is right on Route 66. So's the music store. We're on historic Route 66.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. And so you and I met at the NAMM Show, and it was it was Dom that sort of told me to go to the Ideas Center and listen to you speak.
Yeah.
And I never forget it. I mean, I credit you and that lecture, that seminar a lot. I mean, I took pages of notes.
Yeah, I think it was 8 pages of notes you told me.
Yeah. I mean, because it was like you. I mean, you probably. I mean, you are, but you were ahead of the thinking. Like they get you in every year to speak at NAMM, right?
Right. I did again this year.
Yeah, and it was, I don't know, it was the inspiration I needed, because I'd got some ideas, but they weren't dynamic enough. It was just, well, it's just somebody else offering music lessons in a mid-sized city in England. It was like, how do you stand out? And you helped me formalize all of that. So I do, and you and I have spoken many times, right? That about that ideas seminar.
Yeah. Yeah, I one of the things that has been a plus for what I do, and also a detriment, is I don't have a filter on what I think to do, which can either be highly genius or horribly fail. But I don't have a lot of in-between points, and when I first met Dom on the Billy Cobham Clinic tour.
Yeah.
And he was an opening act, and I was like, oh, dude, we don't need some chump opening. Who's this Dom Formularo guy, right? And I literally, after the clinic got done, I had more guys come up to me and say, tell me the next time that Dom guy's doing a clinic at your store.
Yeah.
They weren't asking when Billy was coming back. It was Dom.
Yeah.
So and Dom was always one of those, in fact, one of the books every day I read, I look for a quote, is the
yeah.
Cycle of Success, and even in the seminars, since he passed away, I put a photo of him and talk about we're setting the bar so low we trip on it. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a great ability to connect people, didn't he? You know, I mean, it was
amazing. I remember the last show he was at, you know, Dom 2.0.
right.
He was doing a Sabian Education Networks seminar where he was back on the call doing one and talking about he was going to be at the show and all this and that, and he saw my name was on. You know, I was logged into the seminar to see what he was talking about, and he literally on that seminar pointed out, if you're going to the show, Pete, what time's your session? What time are you talking? You need to go. I mean, he didn't need to do that, but
No,
you know,
no.
he was.
Yeah, no, I remember the 2.0. You know, because that was the last show that I was at.
Right.
You know, and you know, I had 5 minutes with him maybe, and give him a hug, and you know, and yeah, yeah. I can't.
The man had more friends than anybody I knew.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, truly.
yeah. And he's a fantastic example of what were you talking about earlier, whereby, you know, those names, those characters, they were excellent at connecting people. So business would get done in a very personable way. Whereas now it's like you say, it's and I get it. Like, you know, I'm not naive to it. Like, the business has got to make a lot of money at these shows. But NAMM, I mean, you know, you tell me, NAMM, I never did any business. Well, maybe I did, maybe I didn't at NAMM. Maybe I did without realizing. Do you know what I mean? It was always about catching up with you, or catching up with Dom, or catching up with, you know, whoever it was, you know.
Yeah, you know, it was, I'm trying to remember some of the names, but I remember in the early days, you know, people, you knew who maybe the national sales manager was, or the president of the company, or you know, I have a great story about Vic Firth. I went on one of the Sabian tours, but also we went to see Vic Firth Factory as a group of music dealers, and I made enough I had enough points that I got a cheap flight, so I took, you know, Jeanette, who my wife works with me all the time, but I took our daughter, and so we got a rental car from Boston and drove up. We got to dinner with Vic Firth, and I already had prepped my daughter, like, look, you're not going to get in the factory. You know, so here's coloring books, some crayons. You can stay in the, you know, because you're a kid. And so Vic Firth comes over. There's a dinner he throws the night before, and he goes, well, who's here? Well, great. You go, oh, my name's Lindsay, and really, you know, just like a grandpa.
Yeah.
And she goes, yeah, my dad said I probably won't be going through the factory because I'm too young. And he goes, nonsense. You can tour the factory with me.
Yeah.
And literally that next day, he held her hand, and they went through the factory.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never would happen again. And
No,
so every year my daughter would go, like she was in 4th grade. She would go to the NAMM Show with us, and she'd say, Dad, I have to go say hi to Mr. Firth.
Yeah.
And she'd go, okay, you know where the booth is, go over there, I'm here, you know. And she'd go over there and wait, and Kelly Firth would go, oh, let me interrupt Vic, he's in a meeting. And Vic would stop his meeting to come out to say hi to her.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with business.
Yeah, that's how they were, right? I mean, you know,
Yeah.
Vic was always super kind to me, and I knew at the time that he was being kind and gracious, but now, as I'm a little bit older, like I kind of reflect and think, well, he didn't need to do that.
No.
You know.
No, and that's the example, you know, and I used to, he did those PDT, percussion drum teacher, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
seminars. I would take my horn teachers to them out here in Hollywood at Musicians Institute. And he'd look, and there'd be 12 of us are out there, and he'd go, "All right, Pete." I mean, he'd call me out. How many of these people don't play the drums?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, these hands would go up, and you know, he was a real person. You know, here's the funny thing. I tell when I go out and talk to kids at schools, and I see they're playing Vic Firth, and I go, "Did you know that this was a person?"
Yeah.
And they don't know. They don't know.
Yeah. No, I know. It's a real shame. I mean, he did one of those seminars. I attended it in the UK, and there was a kid there. I'll never forget it. He was from King's Lynn, which is like a coastal town, but he had aspirations of making it big in London. And Vic sort of suggested to this kid that he should just become a local kingpin, because the cost of being in London would just eat him whole and spit him out the other end, you know. And I don't know if this kid took his advice, but I certainly did. You know, I relayed that to my situation. Do you know what I mean? Like, just took it.
Right. Yeah, and you know, the industry was full of that. You know, I mean, it wasn't just Vic in the drum industry. It was, you know, the Hoshino family that owns Ibanez and Tama. You know, it was for the longest time, Yoshi Hoshino. I didn't know that Yoshi was the first guy to schlep the first drum set around the United States for the first Tama drum set.
Right.
Did not know that because they never bragged. I didn't know that Tom Tanaka worked with Paul Stanley on the original Iceman guitar.
Yeah.
But these guys were iconic, but yet they were like, they'd come out and say, "Oh, what do we need to do?"
Yeah.
You know, and we sort of got spoiled by that, you know, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I did, because that was
It was a pioneering time in the music industry, and we didn't realize it. We didn't realize that rock and roll, you know, back in those days when they came out, rock concerts and albums in the United States were selling, making more money than pro sports.
Yeah.
In the 70s. You know, it's a stat that people don't realize, but record stores and concert sales, rock and roll, I mean, I don't mean by a little bit, by a landslide, maybe 40, 50% more than pro sports at the time.
So what's your journey, Pete? I mean, when did you? Because obviously I met you 20 years ago at the NAMM Show, but you've been speaking. You've been speaking for over 30 years at the show, but there's more to you than that. Like you know.
Yeah. So you know, I was a kid, grew up in Cleveland, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
The Beatles came on the Ed Sullivan Show. We've heard this story 1,000 times. And I was like, I'm gonna play guitar. And my dad was like, "No, you're not even practicing your trumpet." No. The Beatles came to Cleveland. They didn't want people going crazy. So they had a lottery. You could get your name pulled and buy 2 tickets. My grandmother's name got pulled. She went and bought the tickets. My dad said, "No, you're not going. You're barely 12. You are not going to this crazy thing." I finally talked him into going with my older cousin. Came back that night, didn't do my homework, and realized I didn't need algebra anymore. I didn't need a lot of things. I didn't need science. I wanted to be a musician.
Yeah.
Not that I was any good. I was waiting for the good note fairy in my life to show. You know, like there's the tooth fairy. Well, I knew that one night, you know, just somehow magic wand would happen. I could play anything. You know, I realized later in life. But I was lazy, but I was creative. Played in high school marching band. My dad was like, "Well, if you want to learn something, there's an organ in the front room. You can play organ." And then I discovered that everyone was playing guitar. No one had a keyboard, and the Animals came out, and the Doors, and all these bands, the Zombies. It was like, well, keyboard players. I was the only kid, around that did it. So I started playing, backyard parties when I was in my teens, taverns, stuff we shouldn't be doing. So I had a dual life of playing trumpet and organized school music and playing rock and roll on the outside. And when I went to college, I continued doing the same thing. I paid for my college by playing in rock bands, playing keyboards and a little bit of horns. And, I ended in college studying with the lead trumpet player for the Don Ellis Band, which was a really crazy ride because hanging out with those guys and those odd time meters and, Ralph Humphreys on the drums, who was a kid at the time. Yeah, I mean, all these, it was a pretty cool thing, and so I get out of college and my dad's like, you ought to open a music store. And I was like, dude, you're on drugs. No. So I go to my trumpet lesson and Glenn Stewart goes, dude, you ought to do it. You ought to do it. That'd be great. So I went and did one, started with a 600 square foot place with 4 lesson rooms.
Wow.
Came out after the phone book. Back in the day, there was a thing called the Yellow Pages, and I opened in June, and you had to have your ads in by May. So no one knew I existed, right? So I discovered I had to go into teaching lessons to make food, and rent. So I got a little creative with that. Everybody was teaching traditional lessons, and I was like, well, I want to teach kids how to be in jazz band. Chuck Mangione was out on the radio. We put rock bands together. We put together jazz groups in the summer. There was a guy in town when I was growing up in Cleveland, Royalton Music. It's still in business. The granddaughter's running it. He had a Tia Royalton brass. He put kids in a Tijuana brass band when the Tijuana brass was hot.
Right.
And I was like, well, I'm just going to modify that to today, who's on the radio right now? Let's do it. Aerosmith, And so we proceeded that way. And that's how I got into business and kept growing, discovered that, our lessons were taking off, in a huge way because other people were, teaching,
so
you put your metronome on and play your scales. And I sort of got... So as a kid, I was bored. I couldn't do scales. I couldn't do this. It was horrible. Lessons sucked, because it appealed nothing to my appeal, I'd work on high notes with kids. I'd play Maynard Ferguson albums for them and go, dude, try to do MacArthur Park. We'll just play it down an octave, I was doing crazy stuff with the kids, and I got more people that I knew from college and stuff to help me teach. And they were like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
In fact, in the area, a lot of teachers at first said, don't go there because they're not teaching you the right stuff, which was the best advertising I ever had. Because people were like, well, what are you teaching? I go, I'm teaching fun.
Yeah.
So that's how that was like that was like in 1978 I started the business.
Wow, 1978. I mean, when you say there that you were teaching fun, that's the thread of me knowing you. Like you'd have phrases like rock trumpet and things like that. Like it was basically whatever was hip or fashionable at the time, you were latching onto that and giving the kids what they wanted, rather than
great example. Like last Christmas we had 2 days of our Christmas holiday show. It was everything from beginning piano kids to me putting bands together. And one of the horn bands I put together, we did like Real Big Fish Skank for Christmas, and then we did Donny Hathaway's. And last Christmas, I always blow the name on it, but the R&B Christmas tune. And then one of the kids that was in this thing goes, well, we've never done any hip hop. And I was like, what do you got in mind? Run DMC, Christmas in Hollis. I go, okay, it's in the set. Where the traditional trumpet teacher is not going to do Run DMC.
Yeah.
and I always tell this: if I'm not having fun, I know the kids aren't having fun, and if they're not
Yeah,
having
exactly.
fun, I'm not having fun.
Yeah. And is that do you attribute that to your that ethos to your long-standing career? You know that it has to be like a win-win, right? You know that both parties are having fun.
Yeah.
You know, you're both gaining something out of it.
Yeah, because when I took lessons, it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun on the trumpet. You know, I went and saw the Beatles, back to that, and I went to my lesson that next weekend, and there was a Meet the Beatles songbook. Well, it was piano, vocal, and guitar. I didn't know what it meant, but I bought it. Went
Yeah.
into my lesson and go, I want to learn these tunes. And he goes, that's not music.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, I hate this guy. He sucks. You're not motivating me to play, buddy. I didn't know. I mean, if it was me today, I would go, dude. And there's some teachers that come in to teach at the store and they get aggravated because it's not my store. I'm just a teacher primarily now and work on the marketing. But, you know, I have discussions and go, dude, man, if I was a piano kid, I'd be sleeping on top of the piano with the way you're teaching. I said, don't get butt hurt, but you're not making it fun, you know. And that's, you know, you're complaining about losing students. Well, look in the mirror.
And, you know, I suppose in 2026 with technology and, you know, other distractions, like if it's not fun, they're not going to come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how do you get from Cleveland, which, I mean,
Oh
forgive
my,
me,
yeah.
like,
So
you know, I mean,
my dad got transferred out with the company he worked for. Now I was going to stay back in Cleveland. I was halfway through my senior year, and
Right.
I was staying with my aunt who had an older son who was in the service at the time, but he had been in band, and I was this made him. So one night after a football game, went out to hang out and eat with everyone like I did. Got to her house by midnight, which was what the rules were with my parents. Get home by midnight, and she was frantically ready to call the police that I had been murdered or something. And I was like, it's 5 minutes to 12. What are you talking about? And she goes, well, your cousin never stayed out this late. And I was like, well, I'm going to be. Tomorrow night I have a gig. I may not get home till 1:30. And at that point I was like, you know, I think I'm going to move out to with my parents. So I ended up out in California, which, you know, the music culture was way different out here too. I'd never been in a school that had jazz bands, you know, and this school had 2 jazz bands, and kids were studying with people on the Tonight Show band and crazy stuff like that. You know, being near LA, it was a way different vibe.
Yeah. And what year was that?
That was fall of 1969. So like on the way out here with my old junker, I drove out Route 66 to get here because there weren't a lot of freeways. I was 17, and you know, I was cranking Blood, Sweat, and Tears in Chicago, and you know, all that crazy stuff on the radio, listening to stuff. Jimi Hendrix. So I've always had a weird mix in my head of what's good music, you know, what I like, you know, and that made me unique when I went into college because even though I was a rock keyboard player, I couldn't major on piano because I didn't play Beethoven, and I wasn't a classical trumpet player because I was doing R&B stuff, you know. I knew all the James Brown licks and Otis Redding and Wilson Pickett and all that. And so luckily I ran into a guy in the jazz department, a professor, and he had toured with Woody Herman and Stan Kenton and played with Sarah Vaughan. In fact, he was on the he was in the recording studio with the small studio that did recorded Tequila by accident on the B side. He was a music director on that. So his attitude with music was, does it have black dots? Is it on paper? Does it sound good? Well, then it's music. He had no, He went to school in a time when he had a master's thesis on Beethoven. But when he was in New York and when he was touring with people, he studied with Billy Strayhorn with the Ellington Band on composition. So he had such a diverse thing. I clicked with him, in the collegiate world, because he was like, "Hey, we're doing a recruiting tour. Bring your B3. We'll do. We're doing some Tower of Power tunes. He was just up for doing anything."
And did you start teaching? Like, were you working in music immediately, or like, I mean, teaching
I
or,
never
or sales or?
Yeah, so I never stopped because, I was always playing gigs.
Right.
From when I was 16. So even in college, I did that. I ended up getting my bachelor's degree in performance composition and music education. And then I got my teaching credential in the state of California. I attempted to teach junior high for a bit, but it wasn't. It was too structured for me.
Yeah.
And discipline issues with kids and stuff. It was frustrating. But then, when I opened the store, I'd never worked in retail. It was like, I literally did not know what a wholesaler was. I signed the lease on the building, and I went to a local music store, and I go, hey, it was like 20 miles away. I figured I wouldn't ask someone in the neighborhood. And it was a store I had been a customer at. I go, so where do you get reeds? Where do you buy strings? Literally did not know. And he gave me a business card for a sales rep for Command Music, and he had a great relationship with them, through the years.
Yeah.
But got into it by accident. I didn't have a plan. There was no plan. I still don't have a plan. Well, I probably have a better plan now, but
right.
But still experimenting.
I know, like, so there must have been a year one for the NAMM Show, right? So.
Oh yeah.
What was that like?
I didn't know there was a NAMM Show.
Yeah.
That's how naive I was. So this customer comes in and goes, "Hey, bro, I'm going to be demoing at the NAMM Show. Are you going?" And I was like, "The what?" The NAMM. So I literally went down. It was at the Disneyland Hotel, the old ones, the old green ones that were off of the monorail.
Yeah,
They were in banquet rooms. It was 1979 was my first winter NAMM Show.
Huh.
And literally, the bigger companies had hotel suite rooms so they could demo their amps or their drum sets. It was weird because I had just played Christmas gigs down at that hotel for corporate parties. Yeah. I was like, they're having a convention here? So that was my first show,
was it? I guess it. I mean, I can picture in my mind where the monorails are at Disney. So was it like a small show basically, or? I mean, what was it like?
Well, for me, it was amazing. I mean,
yeah.
But comparative to like 2020, no, it was small, and it was like people had like all small booths, and like I said, Fender probably had a hotel room, and Ibanez was up and coming. I don't even know if Pearl Drums was there. Krumar was the big keyboard thing going on.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot of upcoming products that now today are iconic, that were there.
Amazing.
And it was you didn't realize it, but you were talking to like the guy, I'm like I said, I met Tom Tanaka at Ibanez. I had no idea he was like who he was. He was just this guy at the booth,
Yeah.
And that's some sales reps and heavily male dominated. If there was a woman in the booth, it was somebody's secretary taking orders. No
different
female.
Time.
Yeah, it was way different. A lot of the guys, I wore a T-shirt and some companies wouldn't talk to me because I didn't have a suit and tie on.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it was
Yeah.
way different times. I had longer hair. There's some people. One guy I remember said, I don't remember the booth, but he had a 3-piece suit on. He said, well, you know, we only talk to real business people. And I said, well, and I knew what he meant. You know, I said, well, my money's as green as yours, buddy.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there was that kind of vibe.
Yeah.
You know, where are you located? We're only wanting to deal with people with big stores in at the malls. I didn't have a mall store. You know, all those companies went out of business. You know, Hondo 2 guitars were there. They had polka dot guitars and spider webs. Early IMC stuff, you know, they later bought out Charvel and Jackson. You know what I mean? It was all these everything was it was exciting.
Yeah.
There was new stuff. I mean, you know, Evans drum heads. Ooh, what are these blue heads? What are these red heads? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't explain it. It was like, I mean, it was wow. You know, I mean, I can't explain it in another way, shape, or form. You know,
I mean, I get it. I get it because I can remember I visited Dom in December at his house in New York. And then I got home and we spoke on the phone. And he said, I need to see you at NAMM Show. Can you get to California next month? I mean, these are mind-bending conversations for someone, you know, like, because I can remember, I mean, I said this to him, like, can you remember that the Vic Firth company, they put out this VHS and it was called, I think it was called like The Perfect Pair, and it was Dom talking about drumsticks. Do you remember that?
Yeah. Yes.
I used to watch that with my dad at home, and then I'm sat in Dom's home, and then I come home, and then he says, get yourself out to California. So somehow I you know, I'm probably still paying for it on a credit card. you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so I thought, you know what? Let's get out there. Let's do it. You know.
Well, and it's so back in the early days of Trace Elliott amps, Mark and Clive. You know, Mark now has Ashdown, right? So we're carrying you know, Trace Elliott, and well, we wanted to, but we couldn't because there was one store in LA that had it. Right. And I was like, this is dumb. My customers are asking for it. They're not going to drive 65 miles one way in traffic, you know, take 3 hours to get there.
Yeah.
So I'm at this booth, you know, at the NAMM Show, and I was like, hey, you know, this is what's going on. And he goes, oh, well, if you want to carry it, I didn't know the guy was, here's, you know, we'll get it worked out. We're now going to go through Command Music. Oh, I know those guys. So we get the amps in. So we're doing a good job. And one day Clive and Mark come out and tell, well, let's take your guys to lunch. We go out there and we're having a great time. We're talking about stuff in England, the UK, and, you know, their crazy stories. And one of the guys goes, so what do you guys do at the company? And Mark goes, oh, I'm the president. But that's what was going on in the 90s and the 80s. Yeah. You know, everyone was just Joe Blow, I mean, so to speak, you know?
Yeah, no, that was my impression. Like, when I turned up for the first show, I was very aware that because of reading, like, Modern Drummer and stuff like that, I was very aware that these were all family businesses.
Right.
You know, some of them, of course, very old family businesses, but nonetheless. But I didn't imagine for 1 minute that I would be chatting with Vic Firth or Bob Zildjian, you know, and that they would be interested. But like, I'm trying to like compare my first NAMM to your first NAMM, and it must be the same overwhelming experience, you know.
I think maybe the closest thing is I've never been to the London Drum Show, but or PAS. Or PASIC, I mean. But they're small. Everyone's got like small displays.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what this thing was like. And it was one of these things that no one had endorsees there or anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
wasn't. We weren't at that time period yet on who was endorsing what.
yeah,
You know, but but the NAMM show's still that way. I mean, a couple of years ago, my buddy Alan Friedman, who does all the accounting stuff seminars at NAMM, he always puts a jam on at the Hilton. And one, I get a text from him like in January. This was like maybe 3 years ago, and he goes, "Hey, do you play tenor sax?" Yeah. And he goes, "Do you have one?" "Yes." "What kind of songs do you want to play?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what kind of songs?" I mean, if he's doing like some crazy fusion stuff, I'm not the guy. I'm a R&B player. He goes,
yeah, yeah.
"Miss You" by the Rolling Stones. I'm like, okay, count me in. I know that tune. I've played it on tenor sax. So I show up at this thing, and I see Bernard Purdie is standing talking to Ellis Hall, who's a former singer on Tower of Power, back with like Only So Much Oil in the Ground, that album. And I'm going, wow, this is cool. I'm not going to interrupt them because they're having a good conversation. So I'm playing one song. I got my tenor strapped on, and he introduces me first to go on stage. I'm like, okay, so I get up there on stage, nice round of applause, and then he introduces Ellis Hall, who's blind, singer, and I'm like, Ellis is singing? I'm standing next to Ellis Hall from Tower of Power? Holy crap, guess who's getting on the drum set? Bernard Purdie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So those moments still happen. And I was like, what the hell am I doing up here playing tenor sax with Bernard Purdie?
Yeah. No, I've seen you. I've seen you play. I've seen you play at the Hilton and at the Marriott, and
Yeah.
these things do happen, don't they? Like,
I was pinching myself. It's like,
yeah,
so some of the really good sax players I work with, they're like, dude, how did you get that gig? I go, long connections,
Yeah.
with a lot of people. But
Yeah.
it still happens. But back then there wasn't any jamming at the NAMM show. There wasn't any of that. It was a lot of guys in three-piece suits. Some of you had white belts and white shoes, and it was back, 1979. You have to go back in that time period,
Yeah. See, I turned up. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, the old school reps,
Yeah.
just old school reps.
Yeah, you see, I turned up 2004, and it's maybe the heyday. Like, you've got a gig going on in every bar.
Oh yeah.
Every night. Then of course you've got the big shows, like, you remember, like Sabian Live and
Right, and the Vando Jam the night before, Van Doren. I mean,
yeah,
there was for his horn players like Eric Marienthal and Kirk Whalen and all. I mean, it was like, and anybody could go with their horn and sit in on one or two tunes with these. That was over at the Hilton too, now on a different night than the Sabian one. Yeah, I know. No, that was, we're at Max. Things were screaming back then,
Yeah.
But in the early days, there wasn't any of that.
And when did that become a thing? Between like 79, 80, like, was that in the 90s or like?
So
when did that...
in the 1980s, I have to put 85. Let's see. We started getting price started happening in the early 80s. 88, 89, started cranking up. Like, Command had a 3-story booth, and the guys from Bon Jovi would be showing up, and Eddie Van Halen would be over at Ernie Ball, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. On down the line. The endorsees started coming in. Steve Vai would be at the Ibanez booth, Paul Gilbert. It's sort of the same time the clinics started going crazy. I mean, in 1991, I had a clinic at my store every Thursday night, starting the week after the NAMM show through the first week of June.
That's insane.
And it was insane. We had Lee Oscar, the harmonica player from War, with his, Lee Oscar harmonicas. We had Tommy Aldridge from Whitesnake. We had I can't even remember all the people we had coming out. And Rocco Prestia from Tower of Power, Alan White from Yes. Just it was crazy what you could do.
Yeah, and we had a kind of ripple effect of that over here. I mean, given that Nottingham's, certainly not London, it's not Manchester, it's not Liverpool, right? So it's,
right.
But you'd have people like, Dom would come, Jim Chapin, you'd have Greg Bissonette, Omar Hakim, these kind of players, and then especially if they were playing it at the arenas at Birmingham or Manchester, whatever,
right?
The companies would be like, well, you've got a couple of days off, let's do stuff.
I had the Average White Band play a clinic on a Monday afternoon. They were playing a concert in Riverside, and they didn't have anything to do until Tuesday. And Dean Markley's strings were like, they owe us a lot of, and so literally I put all of us got on the phones, whoever could make it. It was crazy. I have a great, when you mentioned Jim Chapin, I used to have Jim after the NAMM show do a clinic every year for me, and and there's always funny stories with Jim, And so one year it was a summer, and he was playing at Peter Chris's wife's wedding. She was getting remarried, right?
Okay.
So he's doing a jazz gig. So he comes out to do an all-day masterclass thing, do a thing at night. So we get done at night. It's crowded, and I'm like, Jim goes, I don't want to pay more than $29 for a hotel. Like, Jim, I'm paying for the hotel. There's nothing that cheap, right? And so I'm on the phone trying to find some place, and I go out, Jim, I got us a hotel I'm going to take you to.
Yeah.
He's not there. He has left. And I don't know with who.
Right.
So I'm like, dear God, in the newspaper, I'm going to see elderly legendary drummer found in a dumpster, some evil story, right?
Yeah.
So I'm playing this blues festival like 2 months later, and the singer comes up to me and she goes, are you the guy that has the music store that had Jim Chapin out? And I'm like, yeah. She goes, I woke up, it was 2 a.m, and my boyfriend and him are playing snare drums in the kitchen. Turned out it went with somebody I knew. So later on, the next January rolls around, I'm driving in LA, the same thing about pricing on the hotels. It's 2 a.m, and I just want to get back home. And he says to me, he goes, so what kind of drum set do you have? And I was like, Jim, I don't play drums at all. He goes, oh, you don't? Well, I thought you were a drummer. I go, I can tell you about the molar grip. I can tell you everything you've ever taught, but don't give me a pair of sticks. And he goes, wow, what do you play? Trumpet. Oh, one of my favorite trumpet lines. And he starts playing these famous, iconic bebop trumpet lines in the car while I'm driving him. All right. Then he stops and says, Harry Chapin? I go, yeah. He goes, that song wasn't about me.
Right.
And I was like, what? He goes, that was about Harry's wife's ex-husband. That wasn't about me. He goes, I had a first set, a family and a second family. In my first family, the reason I played the commercial gigs is so I could support both families I had. It just was a total human element of like non-music,
Yeah.
It was one of the most amazing moments.
Those kind of things are my favorite memories of Jim, because he used to so his mum was Scottish, and when he was in Nottingham, he'd always say to me, I want you to take me for fish and chips. Right. So I do that. We'd go to a chip shop, and then he'd say to the people, can I have it in newspaper? Right. So he'd have his fish and chips in newspaper, like more salt and vinegar than chips, actually, right? you know,
right.
and he'd sit down and he'd start telling stories about when he was a young boy, and that he would take the boat from New York to Liverpool, and he must have been a young boy, because he was talking about World War One veterans that he would see and how they were broken, you know. And I'm like, this, you know, and he would start telling stories of that, and his dad, and then he would start telling, like, I remember this vividly. We were in a restaurant, and it was 1 month after 9/11.
Wow.
And we were like, Jim, like, how are you? You know, how and he's like, well, we're in a pretty bad way right now. And I'd say to him, well, I remember saying to him, like, how does it feel? I said, I'm not trying to upset you here, but you're a New Yorker, you know, like, playing the clubs in the 50s, you've watched New York change, i.e. like the towers being built, and here we are 1 month after, and we're in carnage. And he went really quiet, and he said to me, he says, when I think back about it, he says, it's like a beautiful dream. And he was so poetic with his you know.
Yeah, so it's funny. I discovered, my mom was born in Scotland.
Huh.
And I didn't know Jim and I had that connection until one day.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, pretty interesting. He was, yeah, but the one night when I didn't know where he went, man, I freaked. I was like, did anybody see who he left with?
Yeah.
No, he left with some dude. And I was like,
yeah.
yeah.
But again, right? Like, those characters, they're not. I mean, are they around? Is it different? Like, I don't know. I was lucky, you know. Like, I'm
trying not to be.
End of that.
Yeah, I'm trying not to be old. You know, I'm going to be 74, and you know, there's part of me that is giving up on certain stuff happening ever again, and then. On the other hand, I work with so many young junior high and high school musicians. Like, things haven't changed from when I was in. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, just crazy, stupid stuff. Them having fun, them hanging out. Yeah, you know, I mean, no one's doing gigs every night like they used to do. You know, and stuff like that. But you know, and that was when we were younger. We could cut our teeth that way. But you know, things always change. You know, I mean, thank God there's microwaves. I always have to tell people my age that. So you don't use your microwave? Oh, you don't have a cell phone. Oh,
yeah.
You know, I mean, oh, you don't. You're not streaming anything on TV, right? You know, I mean. So you have to, you have to put things in perspective, you know. But some things that change, you know, they haven't changed, you know. And there's kids excited about playing music, and there's parents that are excited that their kids are doing something other than just behind the what we're doing right now on screen, you know. Yeah. I mean, and so there is a lot of pluses. You know, a couple of weeks ago I was out at the San Bernardino County honor band thing that I had kids playing in, and there's kids from all these different schools, hundreds of them, you know, playing at the University of Redlands performance hall, you know. And you see all these kids, elementary, and you go, things are not bad, you know. I mean, there are still kids interested in playing, you know, and you have to keep refreshing. The NAMM Show's never going to be the same. We're in a very high accounting mode. It's, you know, the personal relationships are gone for the most part. But you don't know. You know, when I went to that very first NAMM show, there was all these people that know who's Ibanez, who's Pearl, who's Tama, who's so-and-so, on and on and on. that have become iconic names. So, I mean, a great example is this. In 1973, my trumpet teacher was touring with the Stan Kenton Band in Japan. It was the Stan Kenton Plays Hair Tour. And Renaud Scholke sent him a couple of trumpets and said, "You're going to meet some guys from Yamaha. Give them these trumpets." And my teacher was like, well, because he was a Scholke endorser. And he goes, "Well, what's going on?" He goes, "Well, those damn guys are going to steal my plans, so I worked out something where they're paying me." An old school Chicago guy. Yeah. So he goes there and meets them on the tour, gets done. One of the guys comes from Yamaha with a box and says, "Trumpet for you." They had made a brand new Yamaha trumpet.
Wow.
He comes back, he opens up, man, plays great. It's copied off the Scholke trumpets. He calls Ronaldo up and goes, "I can't play this. I endorse your trumpets." He goes, "Well, you got some college kid that maybe needs a horn? Sell it to him cheap." That turned out to be me. I needed a new horn.
Wow.
I came into college. This is 1973. I came in with this Yamaha Pro silver-plated trumpet. It was a knockoff of a Scholke, And everybody said, "Where did you get that piece of crap? Get a real horn." Yamaha in the 70s was junk. So every dog has its day. So I don't know. I'm expecting one of these new NAMM shows I go to. There's going to be some dude with a card table and 2 folding chairs with something, and you go, "Holy crap. This is amazing." Because that's what's going to happen. These bigger companies are going to go big, 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 and some young guy's going to come out and go, "Check this out."
Yeah. Yeah.
At one time, there was people made fun of Leo Fender.
Right. Exactly that. Yeah.
You have to remember that.
Yeah. And so, how did you end up? How did you end up speaking at the NAMM show? How did that come out?
So that was interesting. I was writing music articles for Music Inc., and a guy named Bob Popick put on the seminar how to turn a $29 guitar sale into $1,000. So I get on this panel. It was me. It was a guy named Greg Hankins from Columbus, Ohio. George Hines from George's Music Stores in Pennsylvania. And Larry Ferragalli from Nashville, a local store, and me. And I got really prepped for this because it was my first time talking at NAMM Show. I want to make sure I've got my poop together, Mm-hmm. And I get up there and discover Bob Popick did not have any answers to any of the questions he had. Right?
Okay.
So the panel did it. So we repeated this one. That was at the Nashville show. In January, we did the same one again. It got out of control because people weren't even asking Bob questions. They were asking me and a couple of other guys. So Bob, I'm automatically never going to get asked back by Bob to be on a panel. I knew it. So I go, Greg, and I go to see Greg and a couple other guys I knew because Bob was doing a different panel in Nashville. So I look up there and there's Greg and one other guy. There's 2 empty seats. And I'm like, Bob's screwed. He doesn't have enough people to do a seminar because he doesn't have any answers he can't jump in and participate in the questions.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Right? So at one point I'm sitting back there and I see Bob come back to me and go, "Would you mind sitting in?" And I go, "Oh, I would love to." Mm-hmm. So I go up there, and as I'm walking by the NAMM guy, I go, "So, Bob, what are we talking about?" So I get up there. The NAMM guy, Gary Beck, I think was his name at the time, and I'm answering questions just on the fly because if you work in a store, they're not stumpers, So he goes by and goes, "Why, that was really impressive. You had no prep." I go, and I just said, "Well, if you want to really, that's not my expertise. If you really want to hear me talk, put me on, let me speak about music lessons." Right. That's what started it. It was just an opportunity. They always say if an opportunity comes up, take it. Yeah. It was one of those things. I could have said, "Oh, no, Bob, I'm not ready." was like, okay, sure, let's go do it. And that got me on the speaking thing. And that was back early 2000s.
Yeah. So interesting because the Ideas Center or NAMM or whatever they used to call it, like was inside the drum hall, wasn't it? Well, it certainly was when I met you. Like it was on the periphery of that.
Originally, it was at the Hilton.
Oh, okay.
And the problem they found is people, if you get engaged in the NAMM, in the Anaheim Convention Center, you look at your watch and go, damn, I'm 5 minutes late. I'm not going to go. Because it was too far to navigate to. Because you had to get over across there. You had to get on the escalators. It was too hard. So they decided when you met me, they had moved it inside. A lot of people, and they also had made the seminars only 20 minutes instead of they used to be an hour. And a lot of people said, no, I don't want to do it. And my attitude was, you got a new format? Well, let's give it a shot. And there were other people said, no, I talk for an hour and I want this and that. And I was like, I'm going with the flow. And then eventually they were like, we're giving you 2 back-to-back ones.
Yeah.
You still got an hour. You've got, but a lot of people they got cranky, So, but yeah, this year I got an hour one. It was the day before at the Hilton. And it was sort of interesting because this was all the people that flew in just to see seminars. They got there a day early. So it was pretty, it was longer than I've done in the last couple of years, but it was really good. I had more time to talk.
Yeah.
I went into, your analytics on your websites and your Google searches. I went into stuff that an old guy should know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it
was fun. But I also talked about, what I said, if all you remember out of this seminar is if you get them to play, they stay. If you don't get them to play, they're not going to stay taking lessons at your place. It's a simple formula.
No, exactly. And
so, yeah. So I mean, the idea centers, that was that they had a day of sessions. So I wasn't at the idea center this time, but I actually got more time to talk.
And which format works best for you, do you think? Or are you happy to just carry on like changing and going with the flow? I mean, because the last time I was there, it was in the lobby, the foyer.
Right, and that's noisy. That's really noisy.
Yeah.
When you're on that stage, and it's sort of bizarre too because with the way the sun comes through, if you're at an early one, you almost can't see who's in your audience because the backlight is like blinding. Hey, I'm go with the flow. I mean, it's the way this, things keep changing. You gotta,
Yeah, you have to go with it.
I can't explain it. When I first met you, we wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
We might have had Skype going back then, but it probably would have been horrible and
yeah.
I wouldn't be recording to a DAW and all this.
No, exactly. And and you have to go. I think you have to go with it. Otherwise, well, you only have 2 options, right? You either go with it or you get left behind.
Yeah. And that's, and that's like when the pandemic hit. When you and I had talked, I did those video projects. You want to? Here's your track. Record your alto sax in the bathroom. I don't care. Wherever. We put together those video. It was how do you keep kids playing music? Man, that was like rough. And I was so glad that my like I said earlier, that I don't have a filter on ideas. It was there's more ways to say we shouldn't have done what we did during the pandemic than what we did. And I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to edit multiple videos. I didn't know how to do a lot of it. But it was like something had to be done. and so you just you go with the flow.
And
But a lot of
it's
people
easy-
just
it's-
went, well, it's. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's easy to say no, right? And then everything stops. And
Well, it's way easier. I had friends literally that I called up, people that were no longer teaching because I went to another place to teach. I got a hold of all of them, said, what help do you need to survive teaching at home? And they were like, oh, it's only going to be 3 weeks, da-da-da-da-da. I go, dude, it's not going to be. Well, what if it's not 3 weeks? Here's what you can do. I'm using my phone. If you got to have what, with the drum people I was talking about, here, Sabian's got these seminars every week on how to get through this. And they're like, no, it's only going to be 3 weeks. They're not teaching anymore because it wasn't 3 weeks. You know? And,
it was.
I didn't. I was headed over to see you that year. I had bought tickets. I had, it was like, wait a minute, what do you mean I can't fly over to England this summer? How do you get your money back from Norwegian Airlines? It was an interesting year.
Yeah. But we had to do it, right?
Definitely.
Because if you think about what we were talking about earlier, NAMM certainly for me is about people. I'm a music teacher.
Yeah.
I'm not buying anything. So it's about connecting with people. So in that time, just to be able to log on to like the online NAMM, of course it wasn't the same, of course, but it was still nice to connect with people, and technology enabled that, didn't it? So
right. Yeah, that one year, I actually like in 2021 or 2022, we still weren't having a NAMM show. So because of this kind of technology, we had a chat going on between a music store that has lessons in Georgia and my old music store I went to as a kid in Ohio, and we could have this conversation and do a video. I was like, we could do it. It's definitely, it's like those crazy things. I still want to go there. I would still want to come, but I've discovered you and me do our big summer weekend on the same Sunday.
Well, I mean, excuse me. I mean, we can change that. I think it's easier for us to change it. We made a classic mistake a couple of years ago. Like it was the World Cup. The World Cup final, and literally everybody, like England had done really well, and everybody was trying to get out of the concert to go and watch the football. So we were like, well, we need to tune in to what's going on a little bit more, which was a mistake for us.
Right.
But I mean, we're still here. We're still doing it. I mean, do you still play? Do you still gig? Do you still get out there and do it?
Not that much anymore, because most of the gigs I've gotten, like, they're local breweries, and they're like on Saturday afternoon when I'm teaching, and they don't pay much. And I'm teaching 6 days a week. I teach 70 private students a week, on top of other stuff. So I'm getting enough playing in, it's hard to explain, but like I told people I'll play for free if it doesn't interfere with my teaching. So you get a Sunday afternoon, but these guys want to rehearse. They want to do classic rock. They want to rehearse 2 nights a week on tunes I learned in 1966. It's like some kid came up this time and goes, hey, Cody's my guitar teacher, and he said that you can play B3. I go, yeah. What do you think of playing? He goes, Magic Carpet Ride by Steppenwolf. Have you heard of it? I go, yeah, I think I may have played it once or twice in my life. Because you did. I go, when it came out. So I mean, it's still crazy. Here's some kid that's 14 into Steppenwolf, And so and he's asking me if I can play. I miss it, but I don't miss it because, these guys want to rehearse, and it's like, come on, guys. I know the horn lick to knock on wood. I can just show up and play. You know what I mean? But no, we're gonna because to them it's a hangout, and I understand why they like doing it. They got their day job, and then they go home and have a rehearsal twice a week with their buddies and drink beers. I got it. That's what makes music fun. But I'm teaching till 9:00 at night. I'm not about to go. Hey, let's go get some beers and go rehearse.
Yeah. No, well, I mean,
So.
Well, I think that's a great place for us to kind of push pause. I mean, I say that because I would love for us to be able to do this again. Because these
absolutely,
these conversations are just treasure troves for me. I really am grateful for you to give me some time today.
Oh no, I'm glad. And I kept getting messages. I was like, like you said, I'm getting ready for NAMM, which is always something crazy for me. I'm like trying to make sure whatever session I'm doing is really up to date. So I can't do one in September and get it done because I don't know what crazy, especially over here, what crazy things are going to happen, with people. So, and trends change. It was like the one year with the pandemic, we started doing this Zoom call with those stores, and literally we decided to do a part 2, do the second part on Monday. And over the weekend, there was like another shutdown that happened, which we were talking about how things had opened up. And that Monday, literally we had to say, so glad we continued this today because now everyone's shut back down again.
Well, look, I mean, all things equal, so, I will be in California in January, so I mean, I miss you. I miss the show. I miss it. But last 2 years I couldn't make it. But I'm very excited about coming back.
Good. I'm looking forward to it. We'll stay in touch.
Of course.
We'll get to do another one of these calls again.
Yeah. And maybe we can do another podcast together in Anaheim. That would be good.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Yeah.
That'd be really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, doing from the show. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be great. Pete, where can people connect with you, like that are listening to this? I mean, you're on Instagram and like.
I'm on Instagram. It's easy. Instagram. It's my name, Pete Gamber.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably the most.
I'll put that in the show notes.
Instagram's probably where I'm going to get the most traction going on it because I think Facebook sort of aged out with a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, whatever I'll post the link too. I'll repost, and it'll link over to my Instagram or to my Facebook that way too.
Brilliant. All right. Well, Pete, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thanks.
It's been lovely to see you.
Yeah, same here. It's a good way for me to start the week off.
Well, look, have a great day.
Same to you, man. Take care.
Take care.
Good.
All right. Bye.